Hi everyone, it's me, Crafty Witch, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I just want to talk about owl magic or owl medicine and what it is, how you can incorporate it into your practice if you so choose, that kind of thing. So when it comes to owl medicine or owl magic, there's a wealth of information out there. Owls have been found to be associated with various forms of deity, different goddesses in particular. The world over tend to be linked to the more feminine aspect or the divine feminine. So there is a feminine aspect to owl magic, but that does not mean that if you are not female or don't identify as being female that you cannot work with them. Of course you can. A lot of the attributes associated with owl medicine or owl magic include your stereotypical things such as wisdom, hidden knowledge, magic, and that magic could be either used for positive or negative means, I guess you can say. It comes down to the person that's utilizing the magic. So it's not that owls are bad or evil in and of themselves. However, if you research different folklore, legends, that kind of thing, owls are associated sometimes with positive and negative aspects. So there is that paradox there, that balance, if you will. So where I grew up here in Saskatchewan, a lot of the Indigenous people here, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, but one of the prime teachings that I can remember being taught was, for the most part, owls were considered to be negative. They were messengers of death, and sometimes they would be utilized in what we call bad medicine or bad magic. So somebody that, say, was going to deliberately send something evil or bad your way would employ the use of owl or their imagery into their magical practice to send evil or bad your way. I'll give an example of this. So way back in the day, I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, it would have been in the 70s. My grandparents, and I've shared this before, they're medicine people, and they would help people. They didn't use their gifts to cause harm to others. Often people went to them for healing after they've been hit with bad medicine or bad magic. And so they lived very humble lives. They weren't what you would consider to be rich or wealthy by any means. They lived in a house that did not have any indoor plumbing. There was an outhouse. There was a hand pump well in the backyard. They hauled wood and water and, you know, that kind of stuff. They lived very humble lives. And even after, when they moved into their new house, there still wasn't any indoor plumbing. So they still had the outhouse, and they still had a haul in water. And if you wanted hot water, you would heat it up on the stove. They weren't wealthy by any means, you know, to compare it to like modern day standards or anything like that. And they lived like that till the day they died. So they lived very humble lives, and people would go to them for healing work. They'd go to them for ceremonies, to go get what we call doctored. So if somebody sent something bad to you and you got hit with this bad medicine, bad magic, whatever you want to call it, the terminology will differ depending kind of what your practice is, but they would go to my grandparents for help, and people would come up from the States, from all across Canada, to go see them. And so this one time there was this owl that was flying around during the day, and it was like screeching and making all this racket. And owls typically fly, you know, dusk to dawn type of thing. Like nighttime, they're nocturnal, birds. They're nocturnal predators, and they don't typically go around flying around during the day for the most part. And this was a little brown owl. And my Kukum and Mushum, Kukum means grandmother and Mushum means grandfather in Cree. So they go outside, and like my cousins are there and some other relatives are there, and my mom was there and I was there, but I was just a little kid, right? And so this owl was flying around, and it was behaving strangely. Like, it wasn't flying like the way a normal owl would fly. There was something very off about it, and my grandparents knew that this is not a typical owl. This is not an owl. There's something off about this, and they knew it was something bad, just based on what they've observed and everything like that. So my cousin shot the owl, and I guess typically when you shoot a bird, I'm not a hunter, so if there's hunters out there, maybe they would be able to attest to this. But for the most part, I guess when you shoot a bird, it kind of will go like that as it crashes down. It kind of, you know, this thing just dropped straight down. So then they went to get this bird, and when they grabbed it with gloves, they did not use their bare hands. That was the important thing too, is you never want to touch anything that was negative sent to you, whether it's a medicine bundle, some kind of talisman or charm, or a little sachet bag, like a little mojo bag or anything like that. You don't want to touch that with your bare hands if it's been sent to you. Use a shovel, use gloves, use something, a branch, and then if you can, burn it. So that's what they were going to do. They were going to burn this thing. But when they grabbed it, like, there were no bones inside of this thing. And like when they, and it was flying around their house and causing a bunch of racket. But when they shot it and when it dropped, all it was like a little sack stuffed with rags. It wasn't even a bird. Like, it was a little cloth sack. There was some feathers on it, but they did open it up, and it was filled with rags, like cloth rags. There was no blood, no intestines, no, it wasn't a bird. It was just a cloth little bag filled with rags. So, and it was made to look like an owl, but it wasn't an owl. So then they had to start a fire, and they burnt it. And so I can remember that event, and then, you know, everybody was kind of like, ooh, you know, this is really bad stuff, whoever sent this, you know. And my grandparents, they done their thing. They burnt it. They sent whatever they need to send back. They done their thing. I was way too little to even understand what was going on, but I can remember seeing the thing, and I can remember that all the adults were just like abuzz with with what had happened, kind of thing. So that is one way that somebody used owl in a negative way to try to send something bad to my grandparents. Owl has also been associated as being like a warner, not a warner, a death omen, where like if somebody were to die or get seriously hurt, you'll see owl. And it kind of comes to let you know. That doesn't mean that owl in itself is bad. It's just a messenger, right? So it comes to warn you. However, some people just associate the owls as all being evil and bad. And the way I was originally taught was, You know, the little brown ones are bad. You don't want them around. The big white owls, they're okay. They're guardians and protectors. And again, going back to my grandmother, when she was little, she was about 2 or 3 years old. Her parents, I mean, they're tribal people, right? So, I mean, they're gathering wood, they're near this forest or whatever, and she disappears. And her family starts looking for her, and they're calling out her name. Her name was Eliza. They're calling out her name, and no response. And like the family's panicking. So like everybody's now going into the bush, going into the forest, and they're calling out for her, and they're getting more and more worried as time goes on, because they're not hearing her call back or anything. And now it's starting to get dark, and they're still looking for my grandmother. And so they get further into the forest, and then they could see kind of like this log and this great big white thing sitting on the log. And when they got closer to it, it was actually a really giant white snowy owl, I guess it would have been. It was a big, huge white owl, and it had its wing wrapped around my grandmother, who was only like 2 or 3 at the time, and it was keeping her warm. And it protected her until she was found by her family. And then later on, I find out we actually had an ancestor named White Owl. And then also when my mom was young, like a little girl, like maybe around 7 or 10 years old, they actually had 2 pet snowy owls. They were wild animals. They weren't kept indoors or anything like that, but they kind of adopted the family, so to speak. And they would guard the house and the yard. So like whenever my grandparents and like my mom and her siblings, if they ended up traveling somewhere or leaving somewhere, the owls would stay, and they would not let any visitors trespass on their property. They would swoop down at them, and it didn't matter if it was day or night or whatever. They wouldn't let people that they didn't know onto the property. And my mom can remember standing beside them, and she said like they were huge. They were really tall, pure white owls, these 2 white owls, and they stayed with them for a number of years, and then they went on their way and didn't come back, kind of thing. So we've had a close connection to owls in our family. So that's just a little bit of that. And then I have my own experience with white owl, which that's another video for another time. Other things, attributes linked to owl medicine or owl magic would be, of course, wisdom, higher forms of learning. So if you want to go into like maybe post-secondary education or even the trades, or if you want to learn more of the arcane, mystical, magical type of studies, tap into owl. Anything to do with learning, studying, tap into owl medicine or owl magic to help you be able to absorb that information and to retain it. Owl medicine is really good for that. Owl medicine can also be utilized for if you need to, it can be used for shape-shifting. Owl and raven and eagles, those 3 birds are usually the 3, and then sometimes hawk. Those 4 birds are usually the more common ones if people believe in shape-shifting, that they can transform into one of those 4 birds. But owl is linked to shape-shifting as well. I already mentioned the higher learning. I really should have made notes. I'm just doing this off the cuff, sorry, and I ramble. That's nothing new on this channel. They're also linked to like ancient mysteries, arcane knowledge, mystical knowledge, magic, the divine feminine, lunar magic, so anything to do with the moon, anything to do with primordial type magic. You can also tap into owl medicine for that. Owl has also been linked, like I said before, to the divine feminine, and in some cultures around the world, it has even been linked to fertility, giving birth, that kind of thing. So you can tap into owl medicine or owl magic for that as well. Also, if you need to utilize owl medicine to help you with regards to being stealthy, swift action, if you need to make quick decisions, do swift action, you might want to call upon owl medicine for that, especially if you need it to be stealthy. Trying to think of a scenario, perhaps. You know, perhaps you need to kind of blend into your surroundings so you won't be like noticed per se. So kind of that blending in, kind of like using it for glamour magic. You can. Owls are, you know, they can sit in a tree and they can blend right into the bark and you really don't see them. They're very stealthy. They're nighttime hunters. They're nocturnal. And when they fly, you can't hear them. Like their wings are silent. It's not like when other birds during the day fly, you could hear them flap their wings. With owls, it's very, very silent. And that's just how that species of bird has evolved with their hunting. The way eagle is associated with daytime in solar magic, owl is nighttime and lunar, and often associated with the divine feminine. Various goddesses are associated with owl. So off the top of my head, there's like different Celtic goddesses. There's Sumerian goddesses. Like I'm thinking of, oh my gosh, there's like Greek goddesses. So now I'm drawing a blank. There's Lilith. There is Isis, Ishtar, I think. Who else is there? I'm just drawing a complete blank, and I'll probably remember them. Minerva is another one. Oh my goodness. Athena. So yeah, if you want to research that more in depth, feel free to go and explore that. There's a whole bunch of different deities that are associated with owl. But if you want to, you know, maybe hone your magical skills, you can call upon owl. And you don't have to have owl as like your totem animal. Like I know that's been a popular word since like the 80s. You don't have to have owl as your personal totem or any animal to work with that animal. You can call upon them as an ally. You can call upon them to learn their attributes and things like that. So if you want to hone more magical knowledge and skills and that kind of thing, you can call upon owl for that, to guide you through maybe to new paths of learning, to open up doorways for you when it comes to kind of like the secret knowledge and that kind of thing. Different ways you can incorporate owl magic into your life is, for myself, I do have, and I know this is probably gonna not be so cool with some people, but I do have like owl claws, and I do have an owl wing, and I do utilize that in certain ceremonies, and it's done with complete respect. I would never go and kill an animal just to go and gather what parts I needed for a ceremony or something. Either these things are inherited, or they're gifted, or they're acquired humanely. I would never recommend to go and kill any animal just so that you can go and have some kind of magical tool. That goes against my own personal belief. You might have a different belief, and hey, all the more power to you, kind of thing. So you can incorporate owl, or even the imagery of owl, into your ceremonies, whether it's a statue, a photograph, a picture, that kind of thing. You can use owl as kind of a guide during dream magic as well, so you can incorporate owl into your dream work. There's a wide variety of ways you can incorporate owl medicine or owl magic into your lives. Really, your imagination is the only limit. You can create things that maybe nobody's ever thought of before, and that's totally fine. Just document your experiences, what you've done, what happened, how things worked out in the end, that kind of thing. You can incorporate different talismans, maybe a claw from an owl into like a little medicine bundle or a mojo bag or whatever you want to call it, and carry that with you as a form of protection. For myself, to me, owl, and when I think of protection, I think of the snowy owl, the big white owl, that one, and I also think of the horned owl as forms of protection and as allies. And also for me, because of my ancestral link with owls, I do consider them to be that bridge between me and the ancestors as well. I do the same with the bears and the wolves. So that's just for me. And if that works for you, then that's something you can try. But not all owls are bad. And like when we're talking about actual owls out in the world, they're a beautiful bird, and they're a raptor, and they're very important for our ecosystem. And when we talk about owl in a magical sense, they're equally as important. And I think often, depending on the culture, can be misunderstood. They can be seen as evil and bad in some cultures, in certain circumstances. But not everybody thinks of owls in that light. They're not all bad or all evil. They can also bring healing to people because of all the knowledge that they have. And they can work with you with regards to physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing, and mental healing. So they are really good for incorporating them into your own healing journey if you so choose to work with owl medicine. Get to know owl. I think that knowledge is power, and getting to work with them and getting to know them, study them, it would help to hopefully dispel some anxiety or fear in case you do have that towards them. I know there are some people out where I live where they are still very, very fearful of owls, and they think that they're all evil and all bad, kind of like with snake medicine too, right? There's the good and the bad, and really the intent lies within the practitioner and how they choose to utilize that medicine. Anything can be good or bad. My vehicle could be good or bad depending on how I use it. I could use it to get myself to and from work, or to the store, or to a doctor's appointment, and come home. That's good use, right? I could use it bad by running over people deliberately, or running over animals deliberately. That's bad. You know what I'm saying? So it comes down to my intent. I'm the one behind the wheel, just like you guys are the ones behind your own wheel, so to speak, when it comes to magic. And the intention, new word, the intention behind what it is you want to accomplish. So if you want to do bad or evil, or not so good things, that's on you. That's you calling the shots there. And if you want to do good and do healing, again, that's on you. You know, you reap what you sow. Some people don't believe in the law of three or the rule of three, and not everybody is Wiccan. And, you know, some people that are, maybe they're root workers, maybe they're witches, maybe they're shamans. There's a whole bunch of different pagans out there, and we all operate within our own personal worldviews and belief systems. And for some of us, we might walk in the shadows and in the gray between light and dark, and kind of do our own things. So to each their own. But anyway, this is a very long 24-minute video, which I'm probably going to have to maybe scrap, or maybe I'll post it. I don't know. I can't edit these goddamn things. I just post them. They're raw. That's what you get. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of just my little blurb about owl medicine. There's probably so much more that I forgot, but just to summarize, they're good for wisdom, arcane, mystical knowledge. They're good for shape-shifting. They're good for connecting with your ancestors. They're good for protection. They're good for connecting to like lunar magic. They're also good for developing your own psychic abilities as well, like all the clairs, for instance, you know, whether it's clairaudience, clairsentience, whatever. They're really good for developing your psychic abilities, your intuition as well. They're good for shape-shifting, like I said. They're good for glamour magic. They're good for healing. They're messengers from the other world to our world. They will sometimes warn you of death. And it's not they're not the ones doing the death. It's like, don't kill the messenger, right? They're just letting you know, hey, you might be getting some bad news. But they're good. they're not all bad. So they can be used. Their attributes and their likeness can be used either for the good or bad, just like anything else in this world, right? But yeah, that's my little blurb about owl medicine and owl magic. So I'm wearing a toque. Up here in Canada, we call these toques. Toque. My friend in the States, he calls them a beanie, which I thought was kind of different. I've never heard it called a beanie before. We just call them toques where we are, especially if they got the pom-pom on top. But yeah, that's it for now. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day or evening wherever you may be, and take care. Ciao.